We're about to begin a brand new love journey. Comment where you're watching from so we can see that our Soul Stories family is all around the world. The conference room at Cole Enterprises glowed under bright lights, its polished wooden tables reflecting the light. Every employee sat upright, eyes tense as they followed the figure of the man who had just walked in. Lucas Cole, 35 years old, with a youthful, chiseled face and cold gray eyes that burned as if they could pierce through anyone's soul. His dark blue suit fit perfectly over broad shoulders, the tie straightened, and everything about him radiated an aura of arrogance and untouchable authority. He was famous as a tech genius, the man who built a billion-dollar empire in just a decade, but also notorious for being cold, dismissive of love and loyalty. A faint smile hovered on his lips, like someone about to set a clever trap. "You've worked for me a long time," Lucas said, his voice warm but sharp as a blade. "And I want to know, when you have everything in your hands, who will you become?" He held up a sleek black card. The room erupted in murmurs. Everyone recognized it instantly, a limitless credit card, something most of them would never even dream of touching. "This week," Lucas continued, his gaze sweeping over the gaping faces, "each of you will carry one of these cards. Spend it however you wish. No limits, no questions." A brief silence and then whispers broke out everywhere. The longtime butler was already daydreaming about the new Rolex release. The chef tapped the table, calculating the cost of razor-sharp Japanese knives. The driver took a deep breath, picturing a holiday in Monaco with wine and women in bikinis. No one asked why Lucas was doing this. No one thought about the hidden trap. All they saw was a luxury dream falling into their hands. But in the corner of the room, a small figure frowned. Ella. She wore a simple maid's uniform, her blonde hair tied hastily at the back of her neck, a few messy strands falling around her fair face. She still held a bottle of glass cleaner in her hand, as if she had just rushed in from the hallway without fully understanding what was happening. Lucas noticed her hesitant gaze, those crystal-clear blue eyes like a summer lake. Unlike the eagerness of the others, Ella looked at the card as if it were a joke gone too far. "And you?" Lucas suddenly asked, his eyes locking onto Ella. Everyone turned to look. Ella blinked, flustered. I'm better at scrubbing floors than spending money, sir. If you want, I could use the card to buy more window cleaner." Laughter burst across the room. A few people clicked their tongues mockingly. Lucas, however, froze for a moment. No one had ever dared to answer him with such humor. Yet Ella had said it with honesty, without a trace of fear. A spark of amusement flickered in his eyes. "Then try it," Lucas said calmly, placing the card on the table right in front of Ella. "In your hands, you now hold the same power as anyone else here. The question is, what will you do with it?" Ella looked at the card. The overhead lights reflected in shimmering flashes across the smooth black surface. For a fleeting moment, she imagined the unpaid rent, the costly prescriptions for her mother, and her younger brother's worn-down shoes at school. Her chest tightened. But then, Ella gave a soft laugh and shook her head. "This card works better as a mirror than it does for me, Mr. Cole. Look." She lifted the card, angling it so the light reflected her face on its shiny surface, making the entire room burst into laughter again. Lucas didn't laugh, but the corner of his lips twitched, as if fighting off an unfamiliar feeling. For the first time in years, he didn't see greed in someone's eyes when holding the card. He saw innocent irony, a distance Ella deliberately built to hide her own fragility. And that intrigued him more than anything else. The chatter and laughter about luxury purchases filled the air throughout the morning. In the grand dining hall of the Cole estate, the atmosphere buzzed like an underground market of extravagant daydreamers. Butler Bennett, his mustache always groomed to a glossy shine, boasted to anyone who would listen. "The new limited edition Rolex just came out. Platinum case, meteorite dial. Wear that, and everyone will know I'm the one Mr. Cole favors." Head chef Marcus rested his chin on his hand, eyes glowing. "As for me, I'd order a set of Japanese knives. Forged steel, 10 years to perfect. Sliced salmon so thin it melts like paper. Even Mr. Cole himself would have to compliment it." Driver David laughed boisterously, waving his hand. "You're thinking too small." I'll book a first-class ticket to Monaco and rent a private yacht. Beautiful women, Mediterranean sun. Oh, just imagining it makes it worth it. The group burst into laughter, giddy as if the luxuries were already in their grasp. Amid the noise, Ella quietly bent down to scrub the hallway floor beside the dining hall. She still wore her plain pale blue uniform, blonde hair tied back loosely, a few stray strands brushing her cheeks, swaying with each motion of her hand. On her lips, she hummed a tune she had twisted from a detergent commercial. Money, money, what's it for? Buy more fabric softener, so life smells sweeter, longer. Her singing voice wasn't particularly good, but it carried a playful humor that made her chuckle to herself. Bennett glanced her way, chuckling derisively. She'll probably use that black card to buy a shipping container of dish soap. The others roared with laughter. Marcus pretended to keep a straight face. Yeah, and she'll probably ask for a free set of rags as a bonus, too. Their laughter rang through the opulent room. Ella paused, looked up, and smiled back. That's right. At least this house will shine. Meanwhile, you'll only have your wrists shining. A beat of silence, then a chorus of oohs, half mocking, half impressed. Ella returned to her scrubbing, but raised her voice with a grin, as if poking fun at herself. Honestly, if I ever used that card to buy a wedding dress, the groom would probably run for his life. Imagine marrying someone who spends like that. You'd go bankrupt in 3 months. This time the laughter spread wider. Even some of the staff who usually looked down on her couldn't help but chuckle. From the far end of the table, Lucas lifted his eyes from his tablet screen. He had only meant to listen in on his employees' chatter, studying their reactions. But Ella's voice, her humor, her playful self-mockery drew his attention. There she stood, alone among people giddy with dreams of excess. And instead of shrinking back or sulking, Ella had turned herself into the source of amusement, flipping their mockery into her own joke, making the entire room laugh along with her. Lucas felt something unfamiliar. How long had it been since he truly laughed? Since building Cole Enterprises, every laugh around him had been polite, calculated, tinged with flattery. But the way Ella tossed out her words so casually, her bright blue eyes shining as she poked fun at herself, it was so genuine. It cracked the thick ice inside him. The corner of Lucas's lips tugged upward, just slightly. But for the first time in years, he smiled not at someone else's foolishness, but at something warm. He realized he had been watching Ella longer than he should have. That maid was unlike anyone else in this house. The next morning, the Cole estate buzzed like a beehive. In the staff group chat, messages overflowed with pictures. Bennett snapped a picture of himself sporting the platinum case meteorite dial Rolex, captioned, "A new direction in time." Marcus proudly shared an unboxing video of gleaming Japanese knives. David posted a picture of a first-class ticket to Monaco, punctuated with 3 sunglasses emojis. Ella quietly cleared her notifications and tucked her phone into the pocket of her uniform dress. She requested a half-day off, signed the shift board in her neat, round handwriting, as if she were simply going out to buy more floor cleaner. No one noticed her slip out the side gate, cross the cobblestone street, and board bus 14 heading toward Riverside, the poor district rarely mentioned at glittering dinner parties. The morning breeze cooled her cheeks, carrying the scent of waffles from a corner cart. Ella stood on the bus, clutching her worn canvas bag. Inside lay the heavy black card like a secret. With a single swipe, she could rent, pay her mother's prescriptions, and cover her brother's school fees. All could vanish like magic. She pressed her lips together. Not with his money, not like this. First stop, Willow and Ink used books. The wind chimes jingled as she pushed open the door. The smell of yellowed pages and old ink drifted out, soothing like a memory. The shelves were low and crooked. Sunlight cut through, scattering dust specks. The owner, a thin man with round glasses, looked up. "Looking for something, miss?" "Children's books, easy readers, basic math, picture books. Oh, and fun science books for kids who like taking things apart." Ella smiled, squinting playfully. "The kind who fall in love with screws and bolts." The owner chuckled. "You've come to the right shelf." Ella picked books like others picked candy: Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, The Paper Bag Princess, leveled readers, and a few kitchen science experiments with flour and baking soda. On each, she stuck a note. For you, if you don't understand this part, ask Miss Ella at Bright Hope Center. At the counter, she pulled the black card from her bag. The neon light gleamed on its polished surface. The shop owner blinked, glancing from the card to her maid's uniform, then back to the card. Are you sure? I know it looks a little out of season, Ella shrugged, but books are warmth year-round. The card reader beeped. Receipt, $611.40. The shop owner hugged the stack of slips, voice thick with emotion. So many children will be happy. Ella carried the box of books outside, tiptoeing around an oil-stained puddle. The sun rose higher, and the streets grew louder. Second stop, Starlight Pharmacy, at the end of a row of worn brick houses. Its glass door was smudged with fingerprints, price board chalked in white. An old man with silver hair peered over thick glasses behind the counter. What do you need, young lady? I need a few things. Ella handed him a handwritten list. Baby diapers, vitamin C, acetaminophen, sterile gauze, thermometers, a few inhalers for asthma patients, if available. Then she lowered her voice. And do you have any prescriptions on hold because people couldn't pay? The man froze. Of course. Always. I'd like to clear those. Prioritize families with kids and the elderly. His glasses slid half an inch down his nose. Are you with some charity? No, I just like lungs that can breathe properly, Ella grinned. She pulled out the black card. He eyed her maid's uniform, noticing the buttons were slightly off, the hem frayed, and then the card. His face shifted like someone had just told him she'd pay with stolen cash. Do you have ID? He reached toward the desk phone. I'm not saying you're a thief, but this card is for your clothes. Ella quickly raised both hands, laughing. Please don't call the cops. I have my employee ID. I work at the coal estate. Just run $1 first. If it doesn't work, call in a SWAT team. The man hesitated, hands trembling as he slid the card. Beep. Approved. $1. He gaped. She winked. See? Not a bank heist. 10 minutes later, he stacked a pile of pending receipts, thick as an epic novel. Shaky names on the slips. May, 72 heart medications. Thomas, antibiotics for his son. Single mom Janelle, inhalers for little Lily. Total, $3,247.63. This time, run it all, Ella said. And if anyone asks, just say a kind neighbor stepped in. The old man tilted his head. What kind of neighbor wears a maid's uniform? The kind who knows how to clean the windows of people's hearts, Ella quipped, then chuckled. As she left, an old man stood at the door, clutching a small paper bag. He bowed his head, eyes wet. I don't know who did this, but thank you. I don't know either, Ella replied, shoving her hands in her pockets to hide the black card, burning hot like a coal. Don't look. Don't think of using it for yourself. Final stop. Bright Hope Youth Center, a brown brick building with a cracked dirt yard out back, a broken swing, and a rusted slide. Ella knocked. A middle-aged woman with salt and pepper hair, wearing a t-shirt that read, We build readers, not statistics, opened the door smiling. How can I help you? I'd like to help fix the playground. The things that break easiest are the ones kids need the most. The manager put her hands on her hips, smiling helplessly. We've got an estimate here, but it's pricier than hope, cheaper than a miracle. Ella scanned the paper. Rubber flooring, anti-rust paint, safe swings, and new basketball nets. Final number, $12,800. I guess miracles can be paid in installments. Ella pulled out the card, trying to keep her voice steady. Maybe I can pay part now, part as a deposit. The manager laughed until tears welled up. Honey, this card doesn't know installments. It only knows approved. The reader beeped. Then came a sharp inhale, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my God! Oh my God! Don't put my name down, Ella whispered. Just say, someone thought kids deserve unbruised knees. And you? I'll manage with a few scars. Builds character, Ella winked. They both laughed. The manager squeezed her hand warmly, a gesture that would be remembered for a long time. At noon under the blazing sun, Ella sat on the youth center's steps, eating a sandwich bought with spare coins. From afar, children poured into the yard, squealing with delight at the box of books. A curly-haired boy clutched the paper bag princess and shouted to his friend, "I'm gonna make the prince run away barefoot." Exactly the joke Ella had made that morning, though he had no idea. She bit into her sandwich again, throat tight. Maybe this was the right way. The black card in her pocket still weighed heavily on her, but her chest felt lighter. In his corner office at Cole Enterprises, Lucas leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the payment dashboard on his iPad. Instead of jewelers, Monaco, luxury goods like the other cards, the one linked to Ella May showed entirely different entries. Willow and Ink used books, $611.40. Starlight Pharmacy, $3,247.63. Bright Hope Youth Center, $12,800. Lucas frowned. His finger tapped the screen, steady as a metronome. Used books? Cheap pharmacy? Playground? Jonathan, his assistant, poked his head in, dropping a file. "Bennett just checked in with his Rolex, sir." And David's live streaming from a yacht. "And Ella's card?" Lucas asked, eyes glued to the screen. Jonathan skimmed. "Quite odd. No signs of personal indulgence. Maybe some kind of moral grandstanding?" Lucas had asked himself that before Jonathan even spoke. A performance of virtue? To catch his eye? He zoomed in on the Bright Hope transaction. No donor name, no note, just a silent line. Playground restoration deposit? For a few seconds, he stared at his reflection in the glass. Gray eyes sharp, but unsettled. Beneath the surface lay a thought he despised. If it's for show, why hasn't she told anyone? This is... Lucas exhaled, brows still furrowed. Another kind of performance? He spoke as if questioning himself. The words fell onto the polished wood floor and rolled away, leaving only the sound of his heartbeat steady, but not its usual rhythm. Back in Riverside, Ella brushed crumbs off her skirt and stood. She dragged the empty book box, turning away from the cracked playground. Behind her, children stumbled through their first sentences aloud, voices uneven, but the sky seemed a little bluer. She hadn't bought a Rolex. She hadn't gone to Monaco. Not a single thing for herself. She had only laid the first bricks of a bridge, an invisible bridge connecting hearts. And though no one saw it, she smiled as if she had placed the right brick in the right place. The grand dining hall of the Cole estate glowed under the crystal chandeliers. A long table dressed in white linen, edged with silver, shimmered with crystal glasses. Yet the atmosphere was anything but formal. It buzzed like a banquet of boastful show-offs. Butler Bennett raised his left wrist. A dazzling Rolex, its dial glittering like it held the whole universe. He waved it smugly in front of everyone. "See this? Platinum, real meteorite. From now on, even time has to bow to me." Marcus produced a long wooden box, the lid clicking open. Inside gleamed a set of Japanese knives, blades thin as paper. He stroked them like priceless treasures. "With just one slice, salmon will fall like morning dew." Art, ladies and gentlemen, pure art. David, the driver, slapped his hand on the table. "Too small. I've booked first-class tickets to Monaco. Yachts, golden sunshine, champagne. While you're here slicing fish, I'll be admiring bikinis on the deck." Laughter thundered through the room, echoing off polished oak walls. In the corner, Ella sat quietly, holding a soup ladle. Her maid's uniform still bore faint soap stains from the morning. The whole table turned, waiting to see what she would flaunt. "And what about you, Ella?" Bennett arched a brow, sneering. "That card must have bought you some fancy rags, right?" A burst of laughter erupted. Ella set down the ladle, sipped her water, then smiled. "Me? I bought boxes of books for kids at the center, and medicine for some of the elderly in Riverside." Silence lingered for exactly 3 seconds. Then the table exploded in laughter. "Oh my God, a Cinderella philanthropist!" David slapped his thigh, doubled over. "She's rehearsing for the lead role in a soap opera," Marcus added. Bennett shook his head. "I've never heard anything more ridiculous." What a waste of an opportunity. Ella neither blushed nor shrank back. She smiled calmly, shrugged. "Well, I don't have glass slippers, just worn-down shoes, but they'd last longer running around Riverside than glass ones ever would. The room froze for a moment, then soft chuckles broke out, rolling into waves of laughter. But this time, something felt different. They weren't only laughing at her, but also because Ella had genuinely made them laugh with her bold wit. At the head of the table, Lucas sat in silence, observing. When Bennett flaunted his Rolex, Lucas merely nodded. When David bragged about yachts, he smirked faintly. But when Ella spoke, his gaze lingered far longer. She hadn't dropped her head. She hadn't lashed out. She had tossed a single line, flipping sharp ridicule into light-hearted humor. Her clear blue eyes sparkled, her lips curved in a smile that carried no hint of pretense. Lucas leaned back slowly, the wine in his glass swirling. A rare smile tugged at his lips, something his staff almost never saw. Is she pretending to be naive to score points? Or is she truly different from everyone else? He couldn't find the answer. But he knew one thing for certain. In a room filled with hollow laughter, Ella was the only voice he wanted to hear again. Night fell over the Cole estate, wrapped in a mist soft as silk. From the upper floors, only one window glowed in the office, the single eye of the house still awake. In its glass reflection, Lucas saw himself, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, tie loosened, half a glass of whiskey, and the payment dashboard still open on his iPad. 3 stubborn lines remained there, replaying like notes of an odd melody. Willow and Ink used books, Starlight Pharmacy, Bright Hope Youth Center, not jewelry, not resort, not Monaco. Lucas leaned against the desk, his knuckles tapping the wood in a steady rhythm, like a metronome. His mind replayed the dinner earlier. Loud laughter, hollow bragging, and Ella's voice calm, laced with humor. I don't have glass slippers, only worn-down shoes. The words were like a thread, slipping through the proud armor he wore and stitching a seam into a part of him he thought long dead. He let out a dry, self-mocking laugh. Just a maid with a knack for jokes. That's all. Don't make too much of it. But the laugh died when memory stirred an old film reel, dragging him back to his 20s. He had once been poor, the clean, stubborn kind of poor that believes coffee and code can change the world. Classes by day, trays in a corner cafe at night. The smell of espresso clinging to his hair, caramel syrup sticking to his hands. His latte art never came out as hearts, usually something resembling a stranded whale. Customers laughed. He laughed with them, then ducked into the back to wolf down a cold sandwich. That month he was short $30 on rent. The landlord knocked. Lucas stood there, ramen wrappers piled behind him. Next week I'll pay. The landlord sighed and left. He coded on a laptop so old its fan wheezed like a downhill bus. The first lines of Collink, the seed of Cole Enterprises, were born in that damp room. A friend once promised, "We'll conquer the sea together," but at the last moment sold the idea to a cheap venture fund. His first girlfriend wanted stability, which meant a steady paycheck, a suburban house, and stop dreaming about startups. When Lucas refused, she left with the words, "In the end, everyone chooses money." From then on, Lucas's world split neatly in two. Either he put others first, or he chose himself. And he chose himself at any cost. The years that followed brought money in floods. He learned to read people in 5 minutes, close deals in 3 sentences, and build systems of reward and punishment so precise that no one dared stray. Trust, kindness, compassion, these became dangerous variables, noise to eliminate in his optimization model. Everyone sold their souls for money, only at different prices. That was the mantra that helped him sleep, until today. Ella's existence made Lucas uneasy. Not the kind of unease that came from challenge, but the kind that came from spotting a hairline crack in what he believed was bulletproof glass. Tiny enough to overlook, but once seen, impossible to unsee. Light no longer passed through smoothly. It fractured into shards he couldn't name. She spent money as if the black card were an oxygen tank for others. Books for children, medicine for the elderly, a playground. Was she foolish? Or was it some calculated game, performative virtue to win his favor? Lucas hated not knowing. He needed data. He needed a spreadsheet of logic. Jonathan! He pressed the intercom. The assistant appeared almost instantly as if waiting outside the door. Yes, sir? I need a report on LMA, personnel file, work schedule, anything public, family status, address, rental history, proof of any transfers in the last 3 months. Keep it legal, nothing invasive. Understood? Jonathan nodded, unbothered. He was used to this kind of due diligence. Tonight, yes, sir. The door shut. Lucas listened to footsteps fading down the corridor. The office returned to silence, the steady hum of the AC, and his heart beat off rhythm for reasons he refused to name. He zoomed in on Bright Hope Youth Center. No notes, no donor name. If it were a show, why leave no trace? If it was an act, why did no one know? He remembered Ella's eyes when she joked, clear, free of edges. People could lie with words, but eyes were harder to fake. His phone buzzed. Jonathan's file. Lucas opened it, flipping through pages like x-rays of someone's soul. Mother, chronic illness, expensive prescriptions, recently switched treatment plan, costs increasing. Younger brother, final year at community college, 2 semesters unpaid. Works nights at the bus station, sometimes falls asleep in class. Ella, month and a half behind on rent, served a final warning. Heavy work shifts take extra hours without overtime pay to avoid causing trouble. Almost no personal spending, no new clothes, no restaurants, no taxis, only bus fares and cheap groceries. Notes. Thank you letter from Bright Hope for volunteering as a reading tutor last year, a library book slip, a citation for feeding stray cats near her building. Lucas froze. A strange tightness rose in his throat, like someone had opened a window and cold air rushed in. She could fix everything with one swipe, so why hadn't she? He stared at the question as if staring into a mirror. In that mirror, a young man stood behind a cafe counter, apron stained with milk, still clinging to a foolish belief that good people didn't always lose, that some things were worth more than money. Then the image blurred, replaced by present-day Lucas. Tailored suits, the black card his scepter, heart plated in steel. Why not? Pride, dignity, foolishness, or an entirely different operating system where giving wasn't an optional function, but the core code? Lucas walked to the window. Below, the garden gleamed dark and soft. Golden lights lined the gravel path like fallen stars. In the staff courtyard, a slender figure crossed quickly but unhurried, arms full of towels. Ella paused at a bench, set them down, and sat. She tilted her face skyward, lips moving faintly. Maybe she was humming, the kind of half-song no one could catch in full. Then she pulled a cookie from her bag, broke it in half, slipped one piece into her pocket, and set the other on the railing. A black stray cat leapt up, crunching happily. Lucas chuckled under his breath. Feeding strays. He flipped back to the note. A fine for feeding stray cats. Fitting. Back at his desk, he skimmed the last page. Total debts, tuition, and medicine, all together less than 1/10 the price of Bennett's Rolex. One swipe approved, problem solved, but she hadn't done it. Why? His voice slipped out, low, as if speaking to himself. The sound rolled across the floor, slid under the desk, and vanished. Lucas loathed open questions. He liked single right answers. He liked predictable systems. Ella was a runtime error showing up in what he thought was perfect code. He grabbed a pen, opened a notebook, a habit from long ago, rarely used now. He wrote one short line, boxed it in heavy ink. Why not? Below it, he listed 3 possibilities. 1. Virtue signaling. 2. Excessive pride. 3. Different value system. He circled number 3, crossed it out, circled it again, crossed it again, like a boy arguing with himself. His phone lit up. A message from Bennett in the staff chat. Mr. Cole, what whiskey pairs best with a Rolex tonight? Followed by laughing emojis. The chat buzzed with replies. Lucas locked the screen and sighed. Suddenly, he felt tired of the hollow glitter he himself had fostered. A soft knock. Jonathan poked his head in. "Do you need anything else, sir?" Lucas looked at him, silent for a moment. "An answer." "About Ella." "About me," Lucas said, then waved him off. "That's all. Thank you." The door closed. The office sank into velvet quiet, broken only by the ticking of the wall clock, the one thing in the house not a luxury item, but a cheap wooden clock from his boarding days. He'd never replaced it, maybe because it reminded him that time bowed to no one. Despite Bennett's boasting, time only marched forward, cold and fair. Lucas stared again at the words in his notebook. Why not? He imagined handing Ella an envelope of cash. What would she do? Accept it, thank him, pay her debts, and walk away? Or leave it on his desk with a scrawled note, "Can this money smell like soap?" He laughed. Oddly, he wanted to ask her, not with another experiment, but with a real conversation, the kind he hadn't had in years. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, leaves whispering secrets. Down in the courtyard, Ella's figure was gone, leaving only half a cookie on the railing and a black cat licking its lips in satisfaction. Lucas set his pen down and closed the notebook. The question had no answer, but for the first time in years, he didn't mind. Some equations, he thought, can't be solved with formulas. You live with them for a night, 2 nights, until you learn the rhythm of the unknown. He switched off the office light. Darkness poured in like water, cool and strange. At the end of the hallway, the elevator doors closed quietly, reflecting a face less cold than usual. The Cole Estate's library sat in the East Wing, a room almost no one ever visited. Once grand, now it was simply a space lined with aging wooden shelves and a few armchairs with worn-out arms. Lucas usually ignored the books. In his mind, they didn't yield profits the way contracts or spreadsheets did. But that evening, as he passed down the hall, a familiar voice drifted out. Warm, patient, laced with quiet joy. "Lucy, try one more time. 3/4 plus 1/4 equals what?" A small, hesitant voice answered, 5/4? Ella's laugh rang out, bright and silvery like a bell. "No, sweetheart, 4/4 makes one whole cake. Picture this. I've got a pizza, I eat 3 slices, and you eat the last one. That means we've finished the whole pizza, not 1.5, my dear Lucy." "Oh!" Lucy's eyes widened, then she burst into giggles at the thought of them fighting over pizza. Lucas stopped, leaning against the doorway, silently watching. At the table, Ella sat beside the little girl, her blonde hair tied hastily back, a few loose strands brushing her cheeks. Before them lay not rare volumes, but a third-grade math book and stubby pencils. The desk lamp cast a golden glow that seemed to frame Ella's smile like the border of a painting. "Mr. Cole?" Lucy gasped when she saw him. Lucas raised a brow. "Am I interrupting?" "Not at all, sir." Ella looked a little flustered, but quickly smiled. "We were just rescuing an imaginary pizza." For the first time that day, Lucas laughed. Sounds like a serious mission. Lucy hurried to pack her books, whispered a shy goodbye, and ran off, leaving a hush in the room. Ella straightened the stack of papers, her voice easy, almost teasing. "You came at the right moment. We just proved that kindness is like pizza. The more you share, the more fun it gets." Lucas rested his hand on the back of the chair opposite, eyes narrowing in amusement. "Philosophy of pizza? That's a first." "Well," Ella tilted her head, thinking, then grinned. "Maybe kindness is more like free Wi-Fi. Everyone should share it, not keep it to themselves. And if only one person has it, that's a bit boring, isn't it?" He laughed out loud, unable to help himself. "Free Wi-Fi? You really just compared kindness to a router?" "Exactly. The beauty is, the more it broadcasts, the weaker it gets. And if someone uses it for the wrong thing, well, there's always a block button." She shrugged, face comically serious. Lucas stared at her. At lavish banquets, so many had tried to impress him with philosophies of business, investment, and power. Yet no one had ever made him laugh with something so simple and absurd. He cleared his throat. "Do you always see life this simply?" Ella propped her chin on her hand. her eyes glinting as if the question had tugged loose an old memory. Not exactly. I've been through hard times. When I was 8, my father died, and our family nearly collapsed. Once my mother was sick, and we didn't have a single dollar. I carried my little brother to the clinic, ready to beg the doctor. He shook his head, about to send us away, when a stranger stepped forward and paid. No name, no conditions, just said, "Pass this gift on when you can." Lucas went still. Ella smiled faintly, gaze lowered to the scarred wooden table. From that day, I thought, if I'm alive, if I can still breathe, then I should be that free Wi-Fi. So the gift doesn't stop with me. For a moment, the little room shrank until it was only the two of them. The lamplight washed over Ella's unadorned features, but to Lucas, she looked almost untouchable, like a secret. He swallowed, voice low. You know, it sounds like you don't live in the same world as I do. In my world, people only share Wi-Fi if they've locked it behind the strongest password. Ella burst out laughing. Then your world must have a lot of bad connections. Lucas blinked, then laughed with her. Their laughter bounced off the quiet shelves, filling the library with warmth. For the first time in years, he felt the ice inside him crack under a gentler light. He looked at her, wanting to say something more, but instead only nodded. Thank you for the pizza and Wi-Fi lesson. Maybe I need that reminder more than I thought. Ella shrugged. No problem. My fee is just a smile, and yours isn't too bad, actually. He froze for half a beat, then laughed again. This peculiar maid, with her wit and foolish faith in kindness, had made Lucas Cole, the cold billionaire, laugh more than he had in the past year combined. The next morning, the north wing hallway of the Cole estate buzzed like a nest of young birds learning to chirp. Whispers bounced off oak-paneled walls and came back in fragments. Pretending, sucking up, innocent. Yeah, right. The source of this poison was no mystery. Bennett. The longtime butler adjusted his striped tie and polished mustache, leaving behind a trail of cologne and a remark softer than a needle drop wherever he walked. She used the black card to buy old books, he sneered to Marcus in the kitchen, loud enough for 3 others to hear. If that's not an act, then what is? I won't say who she's performing for. Marcus lowered his voice, though his eyes gleamed. You mean, for him? Bennett shrugged. Didn't say a word. Some people choose Rolex, while others choose children's books. From where I stand, both are bribes, just in different envelopes. The whispers spread further down the hall. In the laundry room, 2 maids conspired. Ella's sweet, but strange. Who ignores overdue rent just to fix a playground? Maybe it's a strategy to build a saintly image. Could get her promoted fast. In the staff dining room, David laughed loudest. Last night I dreamed Ella swiped the black card to buy crates of dish soap. Talk about pure lover material. The table erupted. Some laughed along, others stayed silent, turning away. Ella heard it all. People at the bottom of the house hierarchy had a sixth sense, when to speak and when to stay silent. She kept smiling, greeting everyone as usual, changing flowers in vases, swapping tablecloths, replacing pillowcases. Only one thing was different. Sometimes her hands paused mid-motion, as if she forgot she was holding a hydrangea stem. In the bathroom mirror, she teased herself. So even free Wi-Fi gets interference now? Then she laughed, a laugh for one pair of ears only. Lucas learned of the rumors within half a day. They flowed through Jonathan's ears and landed on his desk as a brief note. Bennett says Ella's acting. Some staff are joining in. Atmosphere tense. Lucas leaned back in his chair. Those 2 words, atmosphere tense, were like a thin blade pressed against his throat. He thought back to the black card meeting, to the smirk on his own lips when he had said, "Spend as you wish. No questions asked." He had flipped the switch on a game with no winners, a social experiment that turned people into graphs, trust into numbers. He had started this toxic game. The thought tightened his chest. He stood abruptly, buttoned his shirt, and decided to walk through the staff wing, a rare act, usually reserved for inspections. The north wing stretched straight as an arrow. At the corner, a sharp clang. rang out, followed by an instinctive, "Ah!" He saw the spill first, a streak of cleaner foaming on the tiles like spilled milk. Then Ella, arms full of white towels, stepping into the slick spot, sliding as if onto an ice rink. The cleaning cart had already been pushed into the shadows, a bottle of detergent deliberately left uncapped. Lucas's eyes captured it all, cold as a camera. "Careful!" he barked, lunging forward. His intent was to catch her before she fell. The result, both of them skidded, landing gracelessly on the wet floor. Thud. Whoomp. Soap foam splattered everywhere, crowning Lucas's head with a ridiculous halo of bubbles. Ella lay on her side, eyes wide, a blob of suds stuck to her nose like a cat's whisker. For 1 second, the hallway went still. Then Ella burst out laughing. Her laughter bounced off the walls, popping like bubbles themselves. Lucas laughed too, half because it was genuinely funny, half because the alternative was swearing. "Sorry," Ella said, pushing herself up, blonde hair plastered wet against her cheeks, looking like she'd just tumbled out of a washing machine. "I didn't realize the floor was so desperate to hug me." Lucas snorted. "Turns out even my floors have taste." They looked at each other and laughed again, so loudly that a few staff members peeked out, ready with barbed comments, but swallowed them at the sight. Lucas leaned forward, offering a hand. "Here." Ella hesitated a beat, then placed her small, warm, trembling hand in his. He pulled her up. In that moment, he caught a shimmer in her eyes. Maybe just soap, maybe something sharper, a wound from words she pretended not to hear. "Are you hurt?" His voice dropped. "Only my pride," she wrinkled her nose. "Luckily, it's cheaper than a Rolex." A chuckle slipped out of him. His gaze flicked to the uncapped bottle. "Who left this?" Ella followed his eyes, smirking faintly. "Maybe the floor opened it itself, out of loneliness." Lucas nodded. "Loneliness breeds foolishness." He glanced toward the shadowy corner where the cart was being wheeled away too quickly. "In people, too." The words dropped into the soapy puddle, rippling outward. Ella seemed to understand, her eyes softening. Jonathan and 2 cleaners rushed over. Lucas ordered, "Bring a wet floor sign. From now on, bottles stay capped when moved. Write that in red ink. Understood?" His voice wasn't loud, but every word struck true. A cluster of staff lingered farther down. David tried to stifle a laugh. Bennett folded his arms, mustache twitching. Lucas's gaze swept the group. Not angry, not threatening, just steady. Steady enough to make several pairs of eyes drop. Once the hall thinned, Lucas guided Ella aside, away from the slick patch. His shirt was streaked with soap, and his hair still wore half a crown of bubbles. Ella giggled. "Do you know that halo makes you look twice as saintly?" "At least someone in this house looks saintly today," he said, then immediately regretted the slip. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. "The rumors, they're hard to hear, aren't they?" Ella dabbed her cheek, smiling faintly. "Rumors are just like weak Wi-Fi. Static for a while, then gone. I'm used to it." "You shouldn't have to be used to it," Lucas said quietly. "I'll take care of it." "You can't stop people from thinking," Ella shrugged, trying to joke. "At best, you change the password from black card 123 to stop guessing." Lucas laughed, though his chest felt heavy. He glanced at the towel in her hand, spotted with soap, thought of his black card experiment, of how it sharpened egos and left one girl with worn-down shoes standing in the storm. "I'm sorry," he said before he could stop himself. Ella blinked. "For what?" "For the thing I called an experiment. And for today's forced skating lesson?" He tilted his head, forcing a smile. "Next time you want to slide, I'll have a proper rink built." Ella laughed out loud. "Just don't forget the helmets." Warm silence settled between them, the kind born of shared awkwardness and honesty. From the corner, Lucy peeked in, saw them laughing, and giggled too before darting off like a little rabbit. Lucas longed to say more than he'd end the game, that he'd address the staff openly, that he wanted to hear more of Ella's free Wi-Fi tales. Instead, he only said, in a breath's length, "Thanks for not falling alone." Ella tilted her head, her blue eyes brightening a shade. "Neither did you." When they walked in opposite directions, The soap was already mopped away, leaving tiles shining and faintly lemon-scented. Maybe it was just the clean floor, or perhaps lighter hearts, but the ceiling lights seemed softer, spilling a honey-colored warmth like late summer sun. In a shadowed corner, Bennett smoothed his mustache again. He didn't like what he had just seen, least of all the smile Lucas had given the maid. He pressed his lips thin, promising himself, if rumors weren't enough, he would find proof. The toxic wind quieted for now, only to gather for a stronger storm. But Lucas already knew how to fight, with water, not wind. And he understood he would first have to switch off the game he himself had started. Soul Stories fam, if you're watching on another channel, come home to us at Soul Stories, where tens of thousands of listeners and sharers come together. By noon, drizzle fell over the estate. The hallways glowed with the silver light of a gloomy day, thin and sharp as a blade. Since early morning, Bennett had been striding around as though with a nail stuck in his shoe. He disappeared for a long while in the staff quarters, then reappeared carrying a thick black folder stuffed with papers. Poking out from the edges were overdue rent notices, medical bills, and final warnings stamped in red, blurred by rain. Urgent, Bennett said, barging into Lucas's office without waiting for permission. Jonathan frowned, but Lucas only looked up calmly. What is it? It's about that girl. Bennett's mustache quivered with excitement. I fear you're being deceived. She's dirt poor, with rent debt, medical bills, and her brother's tuition, but she pretends to be saintly, buying books and fixing playgrounds. Clearly she's acting to squeeze money from you, Mr. Cole. He snapped the folder open like a magician, revealing his deck, pulling out the stack of papers and dropping them onto the desk with a thud. Here is proof. I found these in her room, even overdue rent receipts. A woman like this. You found them where? Lucas interrupted, voice quiet but razor sharp. In her room? Bennett blinked, thrown off for half a beat, then smoothed his mustache. It's my duty to ensure your safety. I check what must be checked. Lucas said nothing. He simply tilted his head at Jonathan. The assistant stepped forward, setting an iPad on the desk. Clean rows of numbers glowed across the screen, neat and merciless. Fine, Lucas said. If we're talking evidence, let's put all the evidence on the table. Jonathan straightened, his voice crisp. Black card audit this past week. Card code name EM, used only for secondhand books, a pharmacy, and a youth center. No spending on herself or relatives. Card code name BN Bennett placed an order for a limited edition Rolex from Alpine Timepieces, valued at $42,000. The order was canceled within 24 hours, and the refund was routed to an intermediary account named Benlux Holdings LLC. That same day, $9,800 was transferred from that account to an offshore bank. Bennett's face blanched. That was just the store's process. They often refund through intermediaries. Next, Lucas signaled. Kitchen expenditures, Jonathan continued, rose by 17% this month despite fewer meals served. Vendor, Marche Fine Goods. Order signed by Mr. Bennett's assistant. Cross-check shows Marche is owned by Bennett's ex-wife's cousin. Whispers rippled like grass in a gust of wind. Marcus, the chef, dropped his gaze, then snapped his head up at Bennett, realizing he'd been used as cover. David snorted. A few stifled chuckles spread. He's lying, Bennett sputtered, pointing at Jonathan. Since when does an assistant have the right? Since you rifled through someone else's room, Lucas said, calm as ice. You drag Ella's debts here to brand her a fraud. Meanwhile, you used your card to stage a fake refund and pocket $9,800, all under the banner of duty and security. He closed the iPad and set it aside. Bennett's mouth opened, then shut. His mustache drooped like a snapped string. The door had been ajar the whole time. A handful of staff huddled outside, torn between fear and curiosity. Behind them, Ella appeared, arms full of clean linens. Her eyes flicked to the pile of her debt notices sprawled on Lucas's desk. She froze, not from shame, but from the violation. Setting the towels down on a chair, she clasped her hands together, standing still. Lucas leaned forward. Do you want to say anything, Ella? She shook her head slightly. I don't need to prove anything. I just do what feels right. Her gaze slid to Bennett, voice firm without anger. And I don't need anyone rummaging through my closet to define who I am. Snickers erupted at the door. David covered his mouth. Marcus muttered, "Bullseye." Bennett thrashed, "Don't you see? That moral facade of hers is what's dangerous. Yesterday you smiled at her in the hall, and everyone saw it. She's climbing fast. And me, I've served you 15 years. You've been paid for 15 years, Lucas replied. Loyalty isn't bought with kickbacks and stage transactions. He turned to Jonathan. Bring HR up here. Draft termination immediately. Settle his pay legally. Cancel all his access now. He paused, eyes drilling into Bennett. You have 1 hour to pack. Security will escort you out. Bennett flushed crimson. You'll regret this. This house will. Lucas cut him off with a flick of his hand. This house needs less cologne and more clean air. Someone burst out laughing. Then, like dominoes, more laughter followed, scornful, sharp. Those who had once clustered around Bennett shrank back, suddenly as useless as ribbons on an empty box. Security arrived. Bennett tried to adjust his tie one last time, but his trembling fingers fumbled. He cast one last look at Ella, eyes burning with a mix of hatred and disbelief, still unable to accept that his downfall had been tipped by a maid in worn-down shoes. Good luck, Ella said simply, so sincerely that a few staff blinked in surprise. Anger doesn't help anyone. Bennett's jaw dropped, words lost. He turned and vanished through the door, like perfume washed away by rain. The room fell silent for a few heartbeats. Lucas pushed the debt papers neatly toward the edge of the desk. He looked at Ella. I'm sorry your privacy was violated. She shook her head. You didn't do it. But I created the game that made people see everything as a strategy, Lucas said slowly, accusing himself. From today, that ends. No more black cards, no more secret tests. In this house, anyone who slanders or fabricates will be gone as swiftly as Bennett. Jonathan jotted notes, nodding. At the doorway, a few staff shrank back, scattering like startled birds. Lucas turned back to Ella, his tone softer. If you want, we can put these papers back where they belong in your room, with a lock. I'll have all staff quarters rekeyed. Ella stepped forward, gathering the papers. Her fingers smoothed the rain stains. No need, she said with a smile. Paper dries, my heart's fine. Lucas faltered for a second. There was a kind of courage that made no noise, standing tall without bowing, without shouting, without revenge. He felt a pang for ever thinking kindness was just a tactic. Ella, he said quietly, thank you for not turning me into the enemy, even when you could have. She met his eyes, blue as the sky after rain. I don't have time to collect enemies. I still have to teach Lucy fractions and feed the stray cats. Soft laughter trickled through the room, gentle as steam from a teacup. The chill broke. Jonathan coughed into his fist to hide a smile. Lucas drew a breath, turning to the staff still lingering. This afternoon, all staff will gather. I'll announce some changes. For now, back to your duties. Our work isn't to weave stories. The crowd dispersed. The hum of shoes, spoons, and kitchen vents resumed like blood flowing back into a body after a seizure. Only Lucas and Ella remained. The rain outside thickened, drumming a steady rhythm on the window ledges. Lucas picked up a fresh towel from the chair, the very one Ella had carried in, and handed it to her. In case the hallways get lonely and open caps again, he said, a rare glint of humor in his eyes. Ella accepted it, smiling. Then I'll just label it Wi-Fi connected. They both laughed, warmth spreading just enough to shrink the room and soften the rain's chill. Somewhere, a clock chimed the hour. Not a Rolex, just the plain wooden clock on the wall. But to Lucas, in that moment, it was the perfect sound for a kinder beginning. Saturday afternoon, Cole Enterprises' offices were quieter than usual. But Lucas wasn't there. Instead, he stood on the edge of a suburban street outside a modest red-tiled house, hands shoved into his pockets, chest tight like a college kid about to interview for his first job. The door opened. Clara, his sister, appeared, the same gray eyes as his, but softer, kinder. Since their parents' death, she had been the one reminding him, Don't let money swallow your heart. But Lucas had let it, and Clara, exhausted, had cut him off. Today, if not for Ella and the way she made him think about free Wi-Fi, he probably would have kept hiding. Clara, Lucas cleared his throat. It's me. Clara narrowed her eyes, momentarily surprised, then folded her arms. You actually know how to knock? Miracles do happen. But the corner of her mouth curved into her rare signal of softening. The kitchen smelled of basil, tomatoes, and fresh bread. Lucas, still in his work shirt, fumbled at the sink with a pile of dishes. The sponge slipped, water splashed everywhere, and a plate nearly clattered to the floor. Clara leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching him with amused eyes. The billionaire tycoon washes dishes worse than my husband. At least he doesn't turn the sink into Niagara Falls. Lucas shot her a sideways glance, lips twitching. If I'd invested in dishwashing tech, the market would look very different now. Sure, the market would be different, but you'd still have no idea how to use a towel. Clara tossed him one. The kitchen filled with scattered laughter. Not polished, not forced. The kind of laughter that made Lucas's chest loosen in a way no glittering banquet ever did. After dinner, they sat on the porch. Clara's daughter, little Maddie, ran in circles, clutching a frayed-haired doll. Lucas watched her, a pang in his chest. He had almost lost all of his family because he once believed connections held no profit. You're still the same, Clara finally said, her tone gentler. But at least today, I see something different in your eyes. Who reminded you? Lucas paused, then answered slowly. No one taught me. Just someone reminded me of how I used to live, before I let work turn into a cage. Clara studied him, eyes narrowing with curiosity. That's someone the maid the staff reports keep gossiping about? Lucas smiled, unexpectedly candid. Maybe. She doesn't preach, she just does, and it makes me want to follow. Clara chuckled softly, patting her brother's shoulder. If she's pulling you back into real life, then good. You'd never guess you used to be the best dishwasher in the family. Lucas laughed too, lightly this time without strain. He realized family ties weren't a strategy, they were breath. And it was Ella, with her smile and her worn-down shoes, who had given him the courage to step through this door. On the porch, Maddie squealed with laughter, running in circles. Lucas scooped her up, lifting her high. She shrieked, "Uncle Lucas is flying!" That feeling, the child's laughter, the faint scent of bread on his hands, and Clara's quiet forgiveness warmed him in a way no report or contract ever could. That night, back at the estate, Lucas paused at the little library door. Inside, he heard Ella's voice teaching Lucy to read. He smiled and walked past without entering. But in his heart, he knew. His path back to real life had begun, and the hand guiding him there belonged to Ella. Thank you for being part of Soul Stories. If you're listening on another channel, come back to the official home so you can continue our love journeys together with the Soul Stories family. That morning, the grand conference hall of Cole Enterprises was packed. Every employee from the estate and the heads of office departments had been summoned. The air buzzed with whispers, speculation running wild about the important announcement Mr. Cole was about to make. On stage, the ceiling lights cast a glow over Lucas. Today he wore a black suit without a tie. His face was serious, but his eyes brighter than usual. He swept his gaze across the room, then drew a steady breath. You all know me as a man who trusts numbers, Lucas began, his voice clear and firm. But there are numbers that cannot be measured, like trust, kindness, and the power to bring people together. In the audience, Bennett, the former butler, was no longer seated there, yet suspicion still lingered among some. Marcus leaned toward David and muttered, "Sounds like a product launch speech." Lucas's lips curved faintly. Today I am announcing the creation of the Cole Foundation, a community trust worth $100 million. Its purpose isn't profit, but opportunity. Books for children, medicine for patients, safe playgrounds for kids. The foundation will operate independently, led by 2 co-directors. Behind him, the screen lit up with bold letters. Cole Foundation, building hope together. Applause trickled in, hesitant and uncertain. The first co-director, Lucas continued, will be myself, as the responsibility is mine to bear. He paused, his eyes lowering to the front rows. The second co-director, every head lifted. One name rang out, is Ella May. The room erupted in gasps. At the back, Ella shot up from her chair, soap still clinging faintly to her hands from polishing glass. She looked electrified. Me? Her voice pitched high. I just scrub floors. Laughter rippled through the room, half disbelief, half amusement. Lucas looked straight at her, his gray eyes lit with a warmth few had ever seen. Then now you'll scrub the cracks in people's hearts. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Some sat with mouths open. From her mother's lap, little Lucy, daughter of the gardener, clapped her tiny hands thinking it was a show. No, this isn't possible, Ella stammered, her cheeks flushed, her heart pounding. Mr. Cole, Lucas stepped down from the stage. His footsteps echoed against marble, steady and unshakable. When he stopped before Ella, the entire hall held its breath. And then the unthinkable. Lucas bent down on one knee. No one deserves it more than you, Ella. His voice rang out, steady, unshaken. You didn't choose a Rolex. You didn't choose a yacht. You chose books for children, medicine for the sick, and a playground rebuilt. You did what I, with all my wealth, never thought to do. And I need you beside me, reminding me every day that the true worth of this foundation isn't in the zeros at the end of a balance sheet, but in smiles. The hall seemed to lose its air. Some lowered their heads, ashamed of their past mockery. Others began to clap slowly at first, then built up until the sound filled the room like a storm of thunder. Ella stood frozen. You're scaring me, Lucas, she swallowed. I'm just a maid. I don't know how to run a foundation. I don't know how to write reports. Lucas looked up, his eyes softened but resolute. I have 100 people to teach you that. What I can't buy, can't learn, is your heart, and this foundation needs it. Ella bit her lip, the floor beneath her feet feeling like cotton. Never in her life had anyone said no one deserves it more to her. She glanced around. Marcus nodded, David looked sheepish, and several maids wiped their eyes. Even Jonathan, the famously stoic aide, tilted his head, his lips pressed as though hiding a smile. Ella drew a shaky breath, then gave a trembling laugh. If I agree, then who's going to mop your floors? Laughter swept the room, easing the tension. Lucas rose to his feet, offering his hand. Then I will. And in return, you'll mop up the cracks in my heart. Ella placed her hand in his. The touch set off another wave of applause, louder, warmer, longer than before. And in that moment, Lucas knew. This wasn't just a public announcement of a foundation. It was the first step towards something greater, something deeply personal, an unspoken bond between him and Ella. Stronger than any contract, truer than any number. 6 months passed as swiftly as a summer rain. The Cole Foundation, once just a headline on the day it was announced, had become a bright flame across news outlets and social media. Yet the most unexpected part wasn't the numbers, but the change in people. The first photos appeared in the papers. An elderly man clutching his prescription, tears welling after his debt was cleared. A group of students beneath a banner reading Cole Foundation Scholarships, proudly holding their college admission letters. In Riverside, the cracked lot had been transformed into a vibrant playground, with new swings, freshly painted slides, and benches for parents waiting for their kids. But the symbol wasn't the foundation's logo. The symbol was Ella May. Photographers caught her stacking books in the community library or arriving in her simple uniform to visit hospitals. The press praised her. Children followed her, calling out, "Miss Ella!" Yet in the small staff room, Ella still wore her worn-out shoes, still ate cheap sandwiches during breaks, and still joked while wiping down glass. Anyone need free Wi-Fi? Best signals in the cleaning corner. The staff laughed out loud, and Lucas, the man who had once never set foot in the staff room, now stopped by often just to hear one of her silly lines. Lucas himself had changed so much that many barely recognized him. The man once known for a half-smile now laughed loudly, sometimes even clumsily trying to crack jokes. Once in a board meeting, he quipped, "If we cut office supply costs, maybe I can finally afford another pen." The staff sat blinking at him. Lucas turned to Ella. She burst out laughing first, and only then did the rest of the room follow. Sometimes, instead of dining at five-star restaurants, Lucas took Ella to a corner noodle shop. He fumbled with chopsticks, splashing broth across the table, making Ella laugh so hard she cried. "You run a $100 million foundation but can't handle a pair of chopsticks?" she teased. Lucas only blushed and muttered, "It's called delegating power to you." In Riverside, the kids had given him a new nickname, Uncle Candy Lucas. It began when Lucas accompanied Ella to the playground. He bought a bag of candy from the corner store, intending to quietly hand it out. But within minutes, children swarmed, crowding and shouting. Lucas scrambled to keep up, pulling fistfuls from the bag until it tore and sweets scattered everywhere. One boy yelled, "Uncle Lucas makes candy rain!" And from then on, the name stuck. At first, Lucas looked embarrassed, but Ella laughed, clapping him on the back. "Call him anything you like as long as the kids smile." So Lucas laughed too. The next time, he brought even more candy, handing it out like Santa Claus in the middle of summer. At night, the little library at the estate still glowed with warm lamplight. Ella read aloud to Lucy while Lucas leaned back in his chair, quietly watching. Lucy dozed off before long. Ella closed the book and turned, catching Lucas still looking at her. "What are you smiling at?" she asked. "I was just thinking." Lucas hesitated, then chuckled softly. "Turns out happiness doesn't come from shareholder meetings or signing ceremonies. It comes from being called Uncle Candy." Ella laughed, sinking into the chair across from him. "Exactly. Candy's sweeter than dividends." They fell silent, save for the steady tick of the wooden clock on the wall. Lucas felt a lightness he hadn't known 6 months ago, and he understood. Without Ella, he'd still be lost in cold, empty numbers. That night, after the Cole Foundation's largest charity event since its founding, the garden behind the estate shimmered under moonlight. Strings of golden lights had just been taken down, and a few scraps of confetti still scattered across the grass. The air still carried the scent of roses and the echoes of laughter from the evening's gala. But now only two people remained, Lucas and Ella, sitting side by side on the old wooden bench where Lucy had once learned to read her first pages. Lucas loosened his tie, letting the night breeze brush his collar. Ella wrapped a thin shawl around her shoulders, her blonde hair slightly tousled after a long, busy day. They sat in silence for a while, listening only to the rustle of leaves and the chirp of crickets at their feet. "Tired?" Lucas asked, his voice unusually gentle. Ella smiled faintly, eyes lifted toward the sky. "Tired, yes, but happier. Seeing the kids laugh, it makes it all worth it." Lucas nodded but said nothing more. He looked at Ella, the moonlight spilling across her face, turning her blue eyes impossibly clear. In his chest, something he had carried for 6 months pounded hard, demanding to be spoken. He drew a deep breath and turned fully toward her. "Ella!" She turned too, waiting. Lucas swallowed, then spoke with a voice firm yet trembling. "I love you. Not because you changed me, but because you showed me that I can be a better version of myself." Ella froze. The words, simple as they were, pierced straight through her heart. Tears welled up, spilling warm against her cheeks. "Lucas," she whispered, voice shaking. And before he could say more, she leaned in, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was neither rushed nor loud. It was tender like the night breeze, yet burning with all the months of restraint. Lucas wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, as though letting go would make everything vanish. The months that followed carried happiness into every corner of their lives. Ella's mother was admitted to the best hospital through the foundation's support after years of illness. On the day of her discharge, she held Lucas's hand, her gaze warm. "Thank you for believing in my daughter. She has always believed in goodness, but few ever believed her back." Lucas only bowed his head, replying softly, "You're the one who raised that strength." Ella's younger brother, Jack, finally graduated. At the ceremony, Ella sat in the front row, gripping Lucas's hand, eyes brimming with tears as Jack lifted his diploma to thunderous applause. Lucas leaned close and whispered, "If necessary, I'll fund the whole university as long as Jack doesn't copy my dishwashing skills." Ella laughed through her tears, happiness overflowing. Lucas also fully reconciled with his sister Clara. One evening, the whole family gathered around her kitchen. Lucas attempted to help cook, and Clara teased, "You're still worse at dishwashing than my husband, but at least now you know how to invite the whole family to dinner." Lucas laughed, glancing at Ella as if to say, "I've found my family again because of you." At the one-year anniversary of the Cole Foundation, the hall glittered with lights, filled with laughter bouncing off every wall. Hundreds of beneficiaries, children, the elderly, and struggling families attended, carrying flowers and handwritten notes. On stage, Lucas gave no long speech. Instead, he simply took Ella's hand and led her out into a storm of applause. Wrapping his arm around her, he whispered just loud enough for the microphone to catch, "True wealth isn't in a bank account. It's in finding someone to share your heart with." The room erupted. Applause thundered, cheers rose, and confetti rained down like a storm of color. Ella flushed, but her eyes shone, her smile radiant under the lights. Lucas leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. And amid the crowd, they saw only each other. With Ella's mother healthy, Jack graduated, Lucas and Clara reunited, and Ella, who was once just a simple maid, was now the beating heart of a foundation. The story had come full circle. In Lucas's arms, Ella knew their love was not a miracle, but the result of kindness, perseverance, and the courage to believe in good. And beneath the lights, with the moon shining beyond the windows, their story ended with laughter, the richest wealth they would ever share.